James sat alone in his dimly lit living room, the soft hum of the night air the only sound. His loyal dog, Hank, lay at his feet, sensing the stillness. Then a loud crash shattered the peace. Before he could react, the door splintered, and a group of ruthless bikers stormed in. "Where's the drive, James?" their leader growled, his eyes cold with malice. Panic surged through James's veins, but he didn't flinch. Hank barked fiercely, but the gang wasn't intimidated. James's fingers brushed against the drawer, feeling the weight of the USB drive. He could hear the gang's harsh breaths, their presence suffocating the room. This wasn't just about survival, it was about protecting what could ruin them all. James made a choice. Without hesitation, he snatched the drive and bolted toward the back door. Hank followed, loyalty in his eyes. The chase had begun. James and Hank ran through the narrow corridor, their breaths sharp in the night air. His heart raced, not just from the chase, but from the burning question, what if they catch us? The cold sting of fear gripped his chest, but his instincts were louder than panic. He couldn't let the drive fall into their hands, not after everything it could destroy. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and for a moment, hope flickered. It was Mike. "James, they know about the house. It's already burning. Get out now." Mike's voice was strained, urgent. Betrayal hit James like a punch to the gut. The old friend he trusted had sold him out. His mind spun. He needed to move fast, faster than he'd ever run. Hank limped beside him, hurt but unwavering. The night was no longer just a fight for survival, it was a desperate race against time. The pounding of motorcycles echoed through the trees, their growls growing louder as the gang closed in. James's legs burned, but he couldn't stop. Not now. He glanced down at Hank, whose limping steps slowed with every stride. The pain in James's chest intensified, not just from exhaustion, but from seeing his loyal companion suffer. "We can't let them catch us." The night air was thick with tension, and James's mind raced. They needed to lose the bikers, find shelter, anything. Suddenly, they stumbled into an old warehouse, its broken windows offering a momentary glimpse of salvation. The door creaked shut behind them, their breaths ragged and heavy. Silence. The gang was close, but for now they were safe. Hank whimpered, his leg dragging behind him. "Just a little longer," James whispered, his voice thick with worry. The calm was temporary. Time was running out, and they couldn't hide forever. The silence in the warehouse was suffocating. James crouched in the shadows, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear the bikes screeching to a halt outside. Every nerve in his body screamed for him to run, but he couldn't leave Hank behind. The dog's breathing was shallow, and James could feel the weight of their situation pressing down on him. "We're not going to make it." But then a thought struck him like a spark. The old ranger station. He had once hid there during a storm deep in the forest. If they could make it there, they could regroup, come up with a real plan. "Come on, Hank," he whispered. The dog's tail gave a weak wag, sensing the hope in his voice. They had one shot. James took a deep breath, steeling himself. This was it. If they didn't leave now, the gang would have them. James and Hank burst through the warehouse doors, sprinting into the dense forest. The darkness swallowed them whole, but they didn't dare stop. Every crack of a branch underfoot was amplified in the silence of the woods. Their escape had been narrow, but James knew it wouldn't last. The bikers were ruthless, and they were close. Hank's limp was growing worse, but the dog refused to slow down. James felt a pang of guilt twist his stomach. I'm pushing him too hard. But there was no time for pity. They had to get to the ranger station, and fast. As they ran, James's mind raced. What if the bikers had already found it? He couldn't risk it. Hank stumbled, falling briefly. James's heart skipped a beat, but Hank was up again, determination in his eyes. They couldn't give up now, not when they were so close. James pushed through the dense underbrush, his breath coming in shallow gasps. His mind was consumed by a single thought. Keep running. The sound of the bikers' engines reverberated in the distance, closer now. His legs screamed for rest, but Hank's suffering was worse. The dog's breath was ragged, his pace slowing with each step. James reached out, gently patting his dog's head, but the fear in Hank's eyes made his heart sink. We can't stop now. They were almost there, the faint outline of the ranger station visible through the trees. But just as hope began to rise, a growl of an engine broke the silence. No, they're here! Panic surged through James's veins. He grabbed Hank's collar, pulling him into a small ravine to hide. The bikers' headlights cut through the night, their shadows dancing on the ground. Every muscle tensed, knowing this was their last chance to stay hidden. James lay flat on the ground, his breath quiet and controlled as the bikers passed just yards away. Hank's body was pressed against his, the dog's breathing labored but steady. Time seemed to stretch, every second feeling like an eternity. James's heart raced, his hand gripping the USB drive in his pocket. Please don't let them find us. The headlights faded into the distance, and the sounds of the engines grew fainter. For a brief moment there was silence, peaceful, almost unreal. James closed his eyes, letting the tension slip away for just a second. But the danger wasn't gone. They couldn't stay hidden forever. With a heavy sigh, he stood slowly, his legs shaking from the strain. Hank followed, a quiet whine escaping him as he stumbled to his feet. The ranger station was just ahead. They had to make it, or it would all be for nothing. As James and Hank neared the ranger station, the weight of exhaustion settled over him. His chest tightened with the realization this was their last chance. The shadows of the station loomed, welcoming them to shelter, but it felt like a fragile promise. Hank's limp had worsened, and James could see the pain in his dog's eyes. He crouched down beside him, the warmth of Hank's body comforting despite the danger that still lingered. Just a little more. But before James could take another step, the unmistakable roar of an engine shattered the quiet. No, the bikers had found them. Panic surged through James's veins. He pulled Hank into the doorway, slamming it shut with everything he had. The station's old wood creaked under the force. Outside, the engines revved, and James knew the bikers were circling. This time, there was no running. This time, they would have to fight. The door rattled as the bikers slammed against it. James's pulse raced, each thud shaking him to the core. Hank stood beside him, his body tense, eyes alert. James knew the danger wasn't just in the bikers, it was in the moment of truth. The station was their last line of defense. The air felt thick with dread. How long before they break through? He couldn't afford to think about it. Every second counted. He motioned to Hank, whispering urgently, "We fight or we die here." The dog's ears perked up, a soft growl escaping him. James's heart swelled with gratitude for his loyal companion. They were a team. Always. With one last look at Hank, James positioned himself by the window, ready. The sound of the bikers closing in made his stomach drop, but he stood tall, prepared for whatever came next. This was their final stand. The door finally splintered and the bikers rushed in, their faces full of anger. But James didn't hesitate. Hank growled beside him, the tension in the air palpable. This was the moment they'd both been preparing for. James gripped the nearby tool, his focus sharp. He had one goal: keep the drive safe. The bikers advanced, but Hank was quicker, charging at the closest one. The two struggled fiercely, and James joined in, using every bit of his skill. It was a fight like no other, but James's determination never wavered. In the end, he and Hank stood strong, breathing heavily but victorious. The bikers were down and James's grip on the drive tightened. He looked at Hank, who was exhausted but unbowed. "We made it, buddy," James said quietly. Their mission was a success, but the journey was far from over. What do you think helped them win? Drop your thoughts in the comments and share if you believe true loyalty can never be defeated.